Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's time to kick off my update 1.52 car builds, of course starting off with the Mitsubishi Evo 8. And I'm honestly happy to report that the Evo 8 is no different from any other of the Evo generations, in which that it's one of the best tuner vehicles in the entirety of Gran Turismo 7. One of the best features about the Evo 8 is the fact that you will not have to downgrade it at all. In fact, you can pretty much run it fully upgraded for all 700 PP events in game. However, before we do get into it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss an upload. So the Evo 8 is pretty much a bargain build when it comes to Gran Turismo 7 tuning. 80,000 credits will grab you this car brand new from Brand Central. As you can see, the PP rating 512, four-wheel drive, 276 brake horsepower, 1400 kg and turbocharged. You can also grab it from the used car dealership as well. However, this will be on rotation and is slightly cheaper overall at 65.8 thousand credits. So now let's head into the tuning portion of the video. I do want to give a big thank you to the livery creator for the livery I use for this car by K-Gems, who has this forged carbon livery. This will give you all the parts that I'm using in the video. Nothing is changed from the livery itself, so go ahead and send him some love. However, if you don't actually want to use the exact same livery, here are the parts I'm running. As you can see, we are running the wide body modification. No engine swap for the Evo 8 just yet, so we are of course running the default engine in the vehicle. In terms of the wheels, I am running the Meister L1s. In terms of the diameter, I'm running the 19-inch rims, and of course we do have some changes to both the width and the offset. So the width is wide and of course the offset is wide also. Next up, let's move into the actual aero components for the vehicle. So in terms of the front of the car, we are running the Type A front bumper. Next, moving over to the side of the vehicle, we are running the Type B side skirts. Heading over to the back of the vehicle, this is completely standard and unchanged. However, we do have a slight change to the rear wing with a Type A rear wing. We also have a few different changes in the racing items, which is of course going to be the roll cage, which is the roll cage Type C. Yes, this does change the performance point rating of a vehicle. Let's move on to the tuning sheet then. So when it comes to any of the Evos, you can pretty much copy paste this tuning sheet over to any of them. This is pretty much my default one that I run on both the Evo 3 and the Evo 9 after update 1.49. So in terms of the build itself, we're going to run it on the racing mediums. However, we also need a pair of intermediates and heavy wets. Suspension is fully customizable with a body height of 110 at the front and 125 at the rear. Moving over to the anti-roll bar, this is going to be 5 at the front and 9 at the rear. Now, typically I do run this at 8. However, I just find with the Evos, it's just not enough. So 9 is a sweet spot for me. Compression at 25 front and 40 rear. Expansion is 40 at the front and 45 at the rear. Natural frequency up next. This is going to be 2.50 at the front and 3.10 at the rear. Negative camber angle, I prefer mine around about 2.5, so that is for both of those, and I don't really run any toe angle. Differential up next is fully customizable. We have the initial torque set at 5 for front and rear, same with acceleration. However, braking I set at 15 as it's a little bit oversensitive. Torque vector in center diff, I run mine at 35 to 65, and then heading over to the transmission, it's the fully customizable racing set to 250, and here are the manual adjustments. So for the final, we run it at 4.017, the sixth is 0.821-328, fifth is 0.971-259, fourth is going to be 1.185-213, third is going to be 1.518-166, second is going to be 2.029-124, and finally first is going to be 2.836-89. Feel free to pause if you need to. As you can see, we've got the fully customizable ECU. There is no ballast and no restriction on the power for this car. Downforce at the front at 70 and at the rear 232. We run the high RPM turbocharger with an anti-lag system set to strong. In terms of the other parts, we have the racing intercooler, racing air cleaner, racing silencer, racing exhaust manifold. We have the racing brake system, so feel free to pick either two of those. The brake pads, once again, racing. Hydraulic handbrake, you don't necessarily need it for Le Mans, however on the tighter tracks you may do. Brake controller, this one's important. I set it to 3 at the rear. That's because the front of the car does tend to dip down under heavy braking. This just counters that. We also have the steering angle, but you don't need to change anything on that. The racing clutch and flywheel, carbon propeller shaft, and of course all the permanent upgrades. So we have bore up, stroke up, engine balance tuning, polished ports, high lift camshaft, titanium connecting rods and pistons, racing crankshaft, all the weight reductions, so stage 1, 2 and 3, and finally increased body rigidity. Feel free to pause at any moment. As mentioned though, the great thing about this tuning sheet is you can pretty much use it for any of the other Evo generations. You'll just need to make a few slight changes to enter the 700 pp regs. In terms of the event difficulty, I fully recommend running it on easy for this event. This just means that we can do the stop and wait method towards the end of that event. Now, in terms of the usability of this car, it's fantastic at the likes of the 4-wheel drive Japanese Challenge. We also have the Race of the Turbo Sports Cars, which is a 700 pp limited event, and of course the Evolution meeting. But the main meat of this car is of course going to be the WTC 700, where it's fantastic at pretty much all the events. My personal favourite is Mount Panorama for a kind of mini grind, but of course for the main grind it's going to be the 24 hours of Le Mans, and that's the event we're going to use in today's video. So go ahead and enter that one. So let's go ahead and discuss the build itself. You will know if you've been around on this channel for a while, ever since the beginning of 2023 when we received the Mitsubishi Evo VIII, the Evo generations have pretty much been my go-to 700 pp grind cars. For me, my Evo VIII build was one of, if not the best build I've ever come up with, and it was transferable across all the other generations. Now, of course, there have been a few changes since the physics update of 1.49, and it just meant that I had to kind of go back and just kind of shuffle out the whole tuning sheet to really make it work under the new physics. So this is pretty much the new meta for all of the Mitsubishi Evos. Again, the only things you'll really have to change is things like certain tires, maybe some of the turbos, maybe put a bit of ballast on to kind of get it in those 700 pp regs. But in terms of the entire setup for the suspension and such, it pretty much is absolutely transferable across every single Evo. So this is one of my most recent creations that I created for the Evo 9 originally, and I've just kind of transferred it across to the Evo 8. So let's get into the strategy itself then. Super simple, super easy. Fuel mix 6, ensure that you've got your brake bias at 3 to the rear, again just to stop the front of the car really dipping down under heavy braking. So in terms of the driving style for this car, you want to be super aggressive but also short shifting and taking advantage of that insane grip and the 4-wheel drive system. Pretty much all the time you will get the best run possible out of any single corner. You can be insanely aggressive on the brakes, braking as late as possible, and that's how I recommend driving this car. The only thing you don't want to do is just over rev it. There is a lot of power in the mid-range, so you can kind of shift around there and still get to your maximum top speed on all the straights. Typically it will top out around about 180 plus miles per hour, a little bit more of course if you are running in the slipstream, but either way you should be making your way through the field with relative ease. As you can see, by the time we're getting towards the end of the straight and into that really heavy braking zone, we are already in the lead. At that point, we don't really need to worry about the AI now. We're in the lead, we can just focus on conserving the fuel, conserving the tyres, and getting ourselves around the rest of the grind. Now, I recommend from the sort of beginning of lap 2 onwards to kind of monitor your weather radar. This is when the chance of rain is at its highest. It can start coming in typically from the end of lap 2 to any point at lap 3. That is the most times you'll start seeing it. Again, there is the odd occasion where it might not rain at all, in which case you just carry on as normal. As you can see, I got a massive formation of weather coming in at the end of lap 2. There's some very heavy rain in it, so I decided to take an early pit stop, box in for the intermediates, and of course fill the car to full at this point. Now the AI are going to continue on with their lap. We're already over 40 seconds ahead of them by the time we do manage to pit, so we're not going to lose any positions whatsoever. However, they are more than likely going to stay out for the majority of this next lap. So they'll go on to lap 3, stay out, and then get caught out by the rain and drive incredibly slow. That is going to work to our advantage as we've already covered off the rain at this point, and we can continue to pull out a pretty insane gap over them. And as predicted, that is pretty much what happened with the majority of the AI, so they just wouldn't be an issue at all during this race. As you can see, the rain did come down rather quite heavily for a brief moment, going into heavy rain conditions before sitting in intermediate conditions for the majority of the race. As you can see, we did get a bit more rain come in, however this was going to miss the actual track itself. However, it did keep temperatures rather quite cool, meaning that the inters conditions wouldn't really start drying out until right at the end of lap 5 onto the beginning of lap 6. So at the end of lap 5, I made the jump to go back on the racing mediums and once again just fill the car to full. Now at this stage of the race, I know I've only got one more lap to complete. That is because as soon as we kind of finish this pit stop, we are going to be on the 6th lap, and in terms of the counter and where the AI are on the track itself, that I will have plenty of time to just sit and stop and wait at the finish line and just let the counter count down. This is why getting a wet race is always much better than getting a dry race. At that point you can do a lot less laps and spend the last couple of minutes just sat there waiting for the timer to tick down. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We'd already lapped a few of the vehicles and most of the others are now taking their pit stop or have only just taken it. So all we're going to do is just drive up to the finish line point and sit just behind it so that we don't trigger the 7th lap. At that point we're just going to stop and wait for the next 3 minutes and let the timer count down. As you can see, our lead was absolutely massive, and then as soon as it crosses over to 0 seconds and time complete, we just launch ourselves across the line, dot on the 30-minute mark. So there we go, first place nice and easy, a time of 30 minutes, 0.946. Unfortunately, the fastest laps were all over the place just due to the weather, and the original first lap doesn't actually count towards your fastest lap for some reason. In terms of the rest of the event though, as you can see, massive lead over everyone else, and of course the payout 825,000 credits in dot on 30 minutes, meaning you can make 1.65 million per hour with this car, which isn't too bad for a absolute bargain build. Overall, this is a solid car that continues the legacy of the Evolution generations, being massively perfect for that 700 pp sweet spot. As mentioned, feel free to use this tuning sheet for all of the other generations of Mitsubishi Evos in game in terms of the road going ones, and again just kind of bring them into that 700 pp limit and you've got yourself a bunch of grinding cards there. A massive thank you to all of my channel members. If you do want to become a channel member, feel free, it does massively help me out between uploads. I hope you have the fantastic rest of your weekend. Take care guys, peace.